I've spent a good portion of my life looking to find ways to enhance my performance and my happiness and fulfillment in life. And one of those ways is through exploring the available consciousness technologies that are around in this fantastic experience we have in this world. And there are many of those. But first, let me define the term so everybody understands what we're talking about. For me, consciousness is that part of ourself when everything else is stripped away. The mind's ramblings, the emotions, the things that are tugging and pulling on us constantly. When all of that quiets down, what's left is our consciousness. And many people will believe, and those people who have seen it for themselves would say that that is what survives when all of this earthly existence goes away. That is the consciousness, the higher self. Don Miguel Ruiz says, it is the force that animates life. So for us, in this definition, consciousness, if you will, is that best part of ourselves, that access to our highest self, our highest knowledge. And technologies are any modality or medicine or way in which we can access that to a greater degree. Now, when doing that, a lot of times you think about putting in stuff. We've had a lot of talks about adding things to your body, like modafinil and things that create a heightened sense of things. When you're talking about consciousness technologies, it's more about a limiting factor. It's more about pulling away and taking away those things that are preventing us from accessing that higher consciousness. So it's almost like opening up the Venetian blinds, and the brain is acting as a filtering device. And there's many of these modalities that have existed since, we've had records and one of the earliest ones is meditation. And it's probably the most widely accepted. And in the meditation practice, you have many different styles, many different ways in which to go about this. But one of the challenges I find for people nowadays who are just practicing meditation is they're sitting down and they're going to do something, but they don't really know where they're going. They haven't actually felt the state that they're trying to attain, so you end up just sitting around and trying to quiet your thoughts, thinking about how your butt feels, maneuvering your legs so it's a little bit more comfortable, and trying to get in some kind of state which you don't really know where you're aiming for, though. And that's part of the problem. So while meditation is one of the most important practices, in my opinion, it's important to at least see how to get there first. And one of the ways to do that I've found is highly effective is floatation tanks. Now, for many of you here, this is Austin. We have great centers around. Probably most of you know about float tanks. For those of you who don't, it's a saltwater isolation tank filled with Epsom salt. And you basically float on your back in complete silence, no smell, no sound, no light. And because the water is heated to the same temperature as your skin, and so is the air, you begin to lose all sensation. And what happens is, like I said earlier, the part of your brain that is actively looking to find perception, sight, sound, smells, touch, that just starts to go to sleep. It has nothing to do. You really can't feel anything. You can't see anything. You can't hear anything. You can't smell anything. So that part of your brain that's looking for predators or looking for people to go out and try to have sex with or whatever the brain is designed to do, that just says, all right, sweet, I can go on vacation. And that gets you into that deeper meditative state that you're trying to do for meditation. So for me, if you're trying to meditate and you haven't quite got there, the float tank is an excellent way to do it. And I find that an hour in the float tank is going to be equivalent to a whole week of deliberate, intentional meditation for me. It really just superpowers that process because it facilitates a deeper quieting of the mind. So that's one of my favorite technologies. Another one involves the breath, and this has been around for a long time. It was brought back into popularity by Dr. Stan Grof, who basically found a methodology in which you can hyperoxygenate your system, and that facilitates, again, a quieting of that reduction filter of the brain. And what I've found in doing this, I've only done this a few times, but it creates these brief periods of incredible insight that very much mimic a psychedelic experience. And it's completely safe to do, but I do recommend you do it with a practitioner, a guide that knows how to lead you through the intensity of the breath and then knows when to call out the breath holds and can help you through the process. Some interesting physiological effects go on, something called tetany, where your arms get, from the extra oxygen, your arms kind of curl up. It's a weird, interesting process, but can be really valuable. And of course, you're not adding anything to your body other than oxygen itself. And it's a really safe and effective way to reach these heightened states. I've had some powerful experiences doing that. So then we move on, of course, now to the traditional plant medicines. And, I have to put a caveat out there. Plant medicines aren't for everyone, and for those who do them, I highly recommend doing them in a legal context, in a place where you don't have to worry about are a little overactive police state to come and bother with you as you're exploring your own consciousness. So, when I do this, I go to Peru, I go to the places where they not only have the traditional practice and understand how to work with the medicine, but I don't have to sweat and worry about some kind of SWAT team busting down my door. That's not the thing you want to be thinking about. And also, you have to be careful which practitioner you go with. Not every practitioner is going to be of the highest integrity, and it also depends on your intent. You can take a bunch of mushrooms and watch a cartoon, and you may not have much of an experience. But you can do it out in the desert with a guide, and it could be a dramatically different story. So I'll run through some of these experiences that have benefited me in my life. Marijuana, which is now fortunately legal in many parts of our country, and hopefully more. That, to me, is an excellent tool for enhancing body consciousness. Really, if you want to understand how your body works on a deeper level, almost like having superpower X-ray vision, I find that the edible form of marijuana, of course, do it in Colorado, don't do it in Texas, you can't do that. But if you're in Colorado and you decide to do this, pay attention to your body and see how things work, see how it feels, see where the knots are, see where the structure of your body is. Because when you're in pain and when you're uncomfortable, it is very difficult to focus on anything you're trying to do. So understanding how your body works, where the discomfort is coming from, what is going on with your posture, with your muscle structure, with where you're tight, where you need to strengthen, is incredibly valuable. And I think marijuana is a really powerful tool to do that. Obviously, it has a lot of other things that people do it for, but on a medicinal and consciousness level, I think that's one of the great gifts that it can bring. The other one I'd like to talk about gets a little bit more intense, obviously. And then we're stepping up to psilocybin. And there's places in Mexico, obviously in Amsterdam, places to do this legal as well. And again, I recommend doing this with a guide. But one of the shamans down in South America, I was asking him about psilocybin, and he's saying that mushrooms are kind of like your really good conscious friend. You can go out and you can party with them, and you and your friend will just hang out, or you can sit down and have a serious conversation and really learn something from them. And what actually psilocybin is doing, going back to the filtering metaphor of the brain, is it's slowing the blood flow to the default mode network of the part of your brain. And that's the network that is actively doing the things I was talking about, looking for fight or flight, dealing with emotions, dealing with these different elements. And the effect of that has been scientifically demonstrated at Johns Hopkins University. And people who went through this clinical trial at Johns Hopkins with psilocybin reported overwhelmingly that it was one of the top 5 experiences in their life. They were able to access something that was incredibly valuable to them. Some people said it was the single most significant experience in their life. Many of them did. And why is that? Because usually we're just getting pushed and pulled like robots with some other kind of system programming in our head that are telling us to do things based on fears, based on impulses, based on desires. And to have this brief respite in time where we can stop and really choose for ourselves what we want to do and have that wisdom and that change of perspective, incredibly valuable in your life if you do it with the right intent. Again, or you could do it and dance your face off at a festival. It's going to be a different story. But if you use it for that intent, it can be incredibly powerful. Stepping on up the chain, there's a medicine called Iboga, which the active alkaloid is ibogaine. And this is gotten a lot of notoriety for its ability to treat heroin addiction. And heroin addiction rates, some of the centers reporting the treatments of Iboga are coming in at like 92%, where the traditional methadone clinics are sub 40% in these treatment methods. And it is a very, very intense process to go through this, but incredibly valuable. To me, what Iboga feels like, it's a 24-hour experience. It comes from a shrub that grows in Gabon in Africa, and the shamans have been using it there traditionally for many years. What it kind of feels like is like you're an ant on a tuning fork, and the universe just goes, and it changes your whole, shakes everything that's not you, shakes everything loose, horribly uncomfortable, you're very nauseous, but it can give you really incredible insight not only into yourself, but why you have these addictive behaviors, why you're driven to do certain things. Give you a moment again to reflect and decide, what do I want to bring into my life? A challenging medicine nonetheless. And if you're going to do it, I recommend finding a shaman of the highest integrity, because this is going to take you through hell and back. The next technology that I've found useful is ayahuasca. This is getting a lot of notoriety. I have some places down in Peru that I like to go to experience this, because that's where the tradition developed, in the rainforest. And this has been one of the most effective and powerful tools for me. I remember I was at a critical inflection point with my company, Onnit, and we were down to basically our last dollars. I had 2 formulas that weren't really hitting the market right, and I had an experience down in Peru. And people think, oh, this is all woo-woo, and maybe it'll help me with spirituality. This helped me with business, amongst other things. It really showed me the path of least resistance and the path where I could implement the fullest integrity in my products and in my company that would allow this company to flourish. And what it was doing is, besides all the visions and besides that connection and releasing some of the fears that have shackled us, really showed me a new alternative and a pathway that I was able to then utilize to help create a multi-million-dollar company. So I think too often people pigeonhole these concepts into, oh, this is just for spirituality or this is just for therapy. It can also be to help benefit you in creating something lasting in any field. That change of perspective is really valuable. The last medicine is a medicine called Wachuma, which I've been experiencing recently, again, down in Peru. Comes from the San Pedro cactus. Incredibly powerful, helps really align you and get you past the point of fearlessness. And really what I learned from that medicine is that only when you're at the bleeding edge of fearlessness, where you're not afraid, you're not stressed, you're not worried about anything, do you actually and truly have free will. And because otherwise your fears are going to drive you in different directions, push and pull you and make you make decisions that are not necessarily of your highest integrity. And when you do some of these medicines, if it works well for you and it suits you and you're called to it, it can take you past that point, to that bleeding edge of fearlessness, where at that point, finally, you have free will. So why? Why do all this stuff? And I think I mentioned some of the reasons, very practical reasons. Getting over your fears, finding an alignment to whichever path you're trying to choose. But there's also some larger macro reasons. We're facing a lot of different environmental crises, different things going on in the world. And one of the insights that I had on my last journey was, we have an environmental problem, yes, but what we really have is a consciousness problem. And until we address the consciousness of society as a whole, and until we get to that point where we know how to take care of each other and take care of the earth, we're going to be in trouble. So if trying to fix and plug all the holes, this little plastic here, this little oil here, until we elevate the consciousness of humanity as a whole, it's going to be a challenge to fix the micro problems. It's been a huge benefit in my life. Obviously, do your research, do your diligence, but I hope it can be a huge benefit in some of your lives as well.